So it has finally come to the point where I must admit, my dream project is going nowhere. As it has been particularly conceptualized, it's never going to be made. I'll try to be brief, but also to get my point across. I just never built myself up to become the type of person who finishes things. And I erroneously thought that this increasingly ambitious project would be the thing which would bring about that breakthrough. Because I cared more about it than anything in the world. But reality is numb to such feelings, and I simply bit way more than I could chew. Though this might be as uninteresting as explaining a dream I had, I would still like to convey what the project was about. The ominous project was so ambitious that it was stupid. So, this part in the video is unscripted and only for those who are interested in learning about the story itself and what was the idea of ominous. For everyone else, you can skip to the time that hopefully will be on screen. So right now I'm showing a bunch of sketches to just showcase that this is indeed a very developed world that I came up with, that I've been working on for a long time as I'm passing through the pages. Of course, this doesn't mean anything when you actually want to make it and make it a final thing, but I thought it was important to showcase that, yes, this is just one example of many other things that I did. My cats are fighting. And pretty much, even if you have all this work done, if you have all this sketched out and planned out, this and 1,000 more notes I made, it doesn't mean anything if you actually want to complete a project. So this is kind of, just if you want to pause and look around the pages to see what kind of things I was making. But as you soon will see, this project is not just about its contents, but also a lot about its form. All of these ideas were meant to be a part not of a regular comic, not of a webtoon style comic. All these ideas were preparing for more of an infinite canvas comic. Something which I have never really seen, and that infinite canvas type comic was meant to be interactable also. It was to have interactable elements, items with descriptions, a glossary, ways to pinpoint certain parts and bookmark them so you can go back. It would have essentially branching paths that would then converge into a single story, the main story that's being told. And all of this was kind of mounting to that. As for the story itself, which all the elements presented here lean toward, it's pretty much about this machine god called Duon, who essentially achieved super intelligence, but and then it went on to do all sorts of things that humanity could not do. It achieved everything once dispelled from humans. But at some point, a demiurge, someone who has achieved super intelligence before it, descended down and gave it nothing but a pen and a piece of paper. And the story of Duon, this creator entity, is that becoming infinite, it realized that it didn't know what to write in that paper, and that's what the demiurge asked. But he realized he couldn't write anything, and so he started to write around it to know what to write in it. All sorts of calculations, sketches, blueprints, everything that's imaginable and unimaginable, and it started writing in. And all those mappings that he was sketching around the paper, eventually he realized wasn't enough, so he made cities out of it, and he scrambled it all into a single huge ball. And that is Ominous, the name of the project. Ominous. Just this floating ball through space of just metal and steel housing countless simulated cities in it, and a lost humanity trying to find its place. And our characters, as we're seeing here, are kind of traversing in it. Um, Factions were made, and the main character here, Omar, in this example, is not completely the main character, but whatever. He's, he's traversing it, and there's all sorts of firewalls and defenses, and there's a whole ecology and taxonomy and a lot of things. But as you can see, what's more interesting in this project here is, for example, I'm just showcasing right now that there is division in the infinite canvas. Sometimes the story can go another way, and I push back here to see that, yeah, the storylines divided at some point, but then they converge and the two characters meet up, and so the story keeps going. And this is kind of the idea. All this effort I put into to sketch out this whole gigantic storyboard, this infinite canvas storyboard on a program called Mischief. I think it amounts to the equivalent of 200 pages. And it allowed me to play with the form of the panels and their direction and how they are placed and the contents they're in a way that a regular comic really would not. So my idea was, on top of all that, to have someone program in interactive elements like a UI or a HUD or some items that you can collect in the backgrounds of each panel sometimes. Animations, the fact that it's interactable and digital, also allowing animations, stuff like that really pushes it to be a different type of comic. Of course, all very constrained. I didn't want everything to be animated, everything to be interactable. It was to be very smartly executed, to know exactly where to put it. I also didn't want actual branching storylines that go on forever. I want them to meet up at some point so that there is one story in the end, only one. But as you can see, as I'm showing you here, all of that lends itself so easily to new types of compositions that really would not be possible without this type of formatting, this type of staging. Of course, it's incredibly ambitious. And as I'm going to say afterwards, and now I'm loading another document right now, where it continues, because it was so long that I couldn't fit in a single document. Mischief literally ran out of space. And it's so long that I ran out of time in the video. I actually had to 2x speed all of this just to fit it in. As you can see, there's interaction between two storylines here. If those panels go right to the other storyline, same here. And this is more action-packed sequence where I really push what can be done with this type of formatting in this type of medium of the digital infinite canvas comic. And it's something I've never really seen. That's why I attempted to do it. But if anyone can take inspiration from this and actually make it out because they're more capable than I am and not just sketch it and actually lead it to the final stages, then go ahead. This is kind of why I'm making this video. It's I want to cut this project because I don't think I'll ever make it. But at the same time, there's so much that went into it that I had friends tell me, oh, you should at least showcase what you had. And this is it. This is a gigantic infinite canvas storyboard that I made. And even though it's long, even though it's long and ambitious, it was only meant to be the prototype. The prototype for something much larger. Like if I were going to finish this that you're seeing with actual final artwork, it would still only be for something like a Kickstarter or something that to gather funding that I could then use on the project. So I already could not finalize this. So imagine the actual project would be hundreds of times what you're seeing. I still like the idea of the project, but its scope, it's the beginner's trap. It's you make something so large that the person who you became cannot accomplish it. I did not This is what this video is about. I did not become the type of person who can finish things like this. I invested on the project as an idea, but not on myself as a person who finishes projects. And I will mention that. And as you're seeing, it just keeps going, and it just keeps going. And form and content meld alike. I try to keep it organic between the medium and its contents, to create interesting compositions that showcase the elements of the story, but also can stand up on themselves. And yeah, it's kind of sad for me looking at all of this. It's kind of hard holding myself together when seeing all of this. But I'm still kind of glad that I tried it out. I'm just sad that I've invested so much on it and it can't be made manifest. These characters mean so much to me. They're like a pantheon in my head. They're as iconic as Mario or something, but they'll never be known. And that's an interesting problem to have. And it's kind of feels like a big excuse. This story I made on the sidelines of my life for over a decade or more, and I was so worried writing down literally thousands of notes of ideas that I would have, that I tried to transcribe everything that happened in my life into a moment in this story or some element in it. But again, if you actually want to make something, you need to become a pro yourself. You need to become the type of person who can finish things. And that's what I didn't do. I just drew and sketched and kept going blindly. And the project got more and more ambitious. But I didn't grow myself to become at its same level. So, yeah, that is ominous. I'm zooming in on itself now. That is my big idea. And I'll try to explain now why I'm making this video. So, hopefully you'll get something out of this. This is really ambitious, and I hope you understand why I quit. But of course, no matter how much I sketched, no matter how many thousands of notes I write, nothing like that would actually prepare me for actually making Ominous. For starters, my programming background goes as far back as RPG Maker and Old Game Maker. In other words, nothing at all. So I tried learning Godot. So I tried learning HTML. It quickly became apparent I'd need to completely reformat my brain to even have the chance of learning these long term. I would have to become both the person who can code and the person who would be drawing thousands of pictures to frame them. It's kind of like my relationship with Blender. I do a whole course and tutorials, and for a brief while it does feel like second nature. But then a week goes by where I don't implement the workflow into my daily life, and suddenly I've forgotten almost everything. And even if I've gotten someone to do the coding for me, it became apparent that the drawing part was too much as well. I've attempted now multiple times to try making my comic in traditional and webtoon formats. And in both attempts, not only is the art subpar, but I cannot approach a finished look or status in either way. I became way too impatient. And suddenly I'm making all sorts of perspective or anatomical or proportional mistakes, messing up the value composition, ruining the flow of panel-to-panel storytelling. Perhaps this doesn't sound unsurpassable, but I have to remind you, the comic was meant to be huge, longer than I'd ever have free time for, even if I didn't have those problems. And again, it is because, as much as I invested in this idea, I didn't invest enough in myself to become the type of person who does great work. I know the drawing fundamentals, and I spent years practicing them, but I'm so slow at learning anything that my grasp of most of them is still juvenile. I'd be requiring so much time to undergo retraining to become competent. But why not learn as you do your projects, I hear you say. After all, lots of authors have their first chapters look ugly, but they get better inevitably, as they go into later chapters. Well, I can't say exactly why, but my drawing skill has gone downhill. My 2017 version of the comic legit looks better than the newer versions. And when I sketch, it's like I've forgotten everything I knew about drawing a figure in space. It's so much so that nearly all my recent drawings became less figurative. And to have enough free time to recover and implement all within the comic, assuming I found someone to do the coding, it's still simply impossible. I technically have enough free time for now, but these are the type of things that require ear to get right. At some point, we need to find jobs. So it scarcely seems like the near 100 chapter story I planned would ever be on the plate. The sketched out comic that I've shown you, as long as intricate as it was, that was just a prototype to draw in attention. Get eyes on it for something like a Kickstarter to become possible. The real version would be unsurmountable. And in the drawing rut I'm in, I can't even figure out how to draw the contents of a couple of panels in the first place. It's an Herculean task for someone whose near 100% of drawing output is just abstract sketches. Look, I've gotten the privilege of knowing some great artists, and it's night and day, who grew into someone used to getting things done and someone like myself who mostly fears the concept of finishing something. It's like I always do the experiment but never the test. My whole life I tried to evolve my art to be able to draw what I idealized, but having become a failure at that, I had to walk backwards and see what my actual art, as it is, not as it ought to be, can accomplish. And ominous, as idealized, is simply out of the picture. I've decided to cover this topic because maybe I could show an example of what not to do, what not to be, who not to become. I've gone from the phase of surpassing myself to one of acceptance. But that doesn't need to be you. Johan Levest, if I'm saying his name right, had this video called How Your Dream Project Secretly Plans to Sabotage You, or something like that. It was a clever title, and how true it is. It's so easy to create false expectations and develop them endlessly. What you should be doing instead is grabbing the smallest version or the thinnest vertical slice of your idea and finish it as soon as possible and put it out there. Finishing stuff is a skill in and of itself. If you don't practice it, you'll end up like me, with thousands of handwritten notes and not a real page done. Looking back, it now seems predictable. My animations were, more often than not, smudgy or sketchy. I never did much of character animation, focusing instead on abstract or surreal scenes. With close to 10 years working in animation, I ended up specializing in, guess what, storyboards, where things ought not to look finished at all. And all these had served as a subconscious excuse. I finished a bunch of music videos, but that was only served as an illusion of the hard work I ought to have been doing. For even those I have done entirely myself, I've made them in a way where I did not have to have finished lines for cleanup, actual character animation, actual compositing. During my career, there was not enough of finishing actual animations or actual illustrations. For example, me and Speedo started at about the same time, about the same place, but whereas I finished one cartoon, he would go on to finish 10, then 20, and so on. Same with Part-Time Seagull, who I also interviewed on this channel. Before doing Gaslight District, he was doing his own shorts and music videos, and before that, he was getting used to finishing stuff with his comic Genitals, which I can't show here. You can follow such metrics everywhere, and they often determine who gets a shot at the front spot and who goes behind the scenes. But after all is said and done, that is not necessarily the end. The scope of my story is not in the cards. It's simply too late for that. However, authors like Koji Morimoto made a career of carrying visuals and stories from an inner city that exists only in his mind. This without actually having to present the whole thing wholesale. There are possible futures like that. It's a question of, instead of adapting myself to an idea, to have ideas adapt to myself. And that's the cool thing about art. There are untapped avenues of potential everywhere. Where one road closes, another one opens. I have more ideas than just ominous. However, for far too long I've let myself to be defined by the possibility of making ominous. And it became sort of my reason for existing. Without it, I felt like I've lost the breath of life and have to find it again. The realization that I am not and cannot realistically become the type of person who can do such things retroactively makes me re-examine every aspect of my creative life. I won't go into the many struggles it brought me psychologically, but it was bad enough that for a few months, and even now, the drawn line from my pen doesn't even seem to be following my mind at all. I've been incapable of drawing or doing things which require a complex linearity of thought building on thought. In other words, something like basic construction drawing, which I have practiced thousands of times, almost feels impossible. My current style has suffered this wave of gestural randomness. Just don't think any type of meaningful story or project can be born from this. I've looked at one of my most recent drawings and thought, that's where I'm at, that's what I am. No more, no less. My limitations came alight. So I've been spending my days trying not to sink further, drawing every day, attempting to slowly sow increasing smidges of thought and intent into whatever I do. I wonder if it's like this to anyone else. I've also been writing a would-have-been story of making ominous, where I introduce the main concept in comic format. I don't know who would be interested in such a thing, but I am compelled to do it. I'm also attempting to collaborate on other projects I've started, so I don't have to do everything myself and assure some quality. All in all, don't be like me. Become what you must. Work through the fear of getting things done. And do whatever you can as soon as you can. Don't let it roll up into a big impossible Katamari ball like I did. Leave seeds for your future self to bloom from, and find a reason to keep drawing as AI engulfs the world. That's the thing, isn't it? The problem isn't being 30. Lots of artists only came about later in life, such as the great Sergio Topi. The problem is being 30 in 2026, where there seems to be a time limit until any endeavor becomes trivialized by AI and lost alongside the endless sludge as humanity devolves and culture stagnates as livelihoods erode. Fun time to be alive as someone who cares about anything. Don't take the future for granted, so use the window of today and get stuff done. Great, another video I ended up making about AI. But well, it's impacting literally everything, so I can't help it. It's also a huge part of why I'm going insane and trying to find new meaning in life. Anyway, hopefully you could relate or use this as a lesson to build upon. I don't think I'd be going anywhere. I think ominous can take different shapes. It's all about how I can adapt to my newfound limitations. After all, it is limitations which breed creativity. So, who knows what idea will pop in your head next? Just considering everything said, find a way to make it doable. It has been Rodin saying, yes, some ideas are too big and some artists too small. There is a limit to willpower and hard work, and you ought to find where such limits lie. Do that and don't be like me. Long-form denial is not cool. I'm not one of the cool guys. I'll give them the space they need, separating the cream from the crop, the weak from the chads. And I'll stick in here, behind. Bye. If you made it this far, do not follow me. Follow Jay, who is making an incredibly ambitious RPG all by himself. Follow Part-Time Seagull, who helms Gaslight District. Even that isn't his limit. Follow Waylon Zhang, who is currently making one of the most unique manga out there. Follow anyone with an animated pilot. Follow anyone who does cool music on Bandcamp or Newgrounds. Anyone who has an actual project. There is so much stuff out there being made by people, and it's okay to not be one of them. Only through such honesty can you begin to find where you belong, I believe.